So why would I start with React in 2025 again? And this is what I want to talk about today, because there's a lot of new stuff going on. There are new trends, there are new interests, and people always talking about, yeah, going with React is a little bit like going with a trend, and then the trend will go away, and then you stand there and you basically have nothing. And you're actually in some kind of trap. You don't get out of there anymore. They say that for so many years right now. And what we see when you take a look at the state of JS trend, it is growing up still. Even though the interest is not the highest anymore, it doesn't really mean too much, because the interest is what we as human beings are interested in. It is what developers are doing on their side projects in open source, reading on the news, seeing on YouTube videos, something like that. This is interest. Interest is not really usage. Usage is something different. Usage and adoption is what in the end defines the idea of the industry standard. So if we take a look at what React is right now, I would say it's the industry standard. Because most of the companies who start new projects or have started new projects are still using React. You can do so much great stuff with React. There is React Native, and you can basically build anything with it, starting from a small website up to a very complex application or even microfront or something like that. And you have a huge ecosystem behind that. There is no other ecosystem as strong as the ecosystem of React right now. And this is one of the biggest things I believe in. So we have made a review round about 3 months from now about our tech stack. So I have written an article about that. You can read that. I'll link it in the show notes. And the idea of the review was to take a look if our decisions we have made 3 years ago going with React and Next.js are actually still valid, and if we can proceed with that, or do we really need to take a look if we substitute it, right? No, we don't. We don't need to substitute it in any way, because React is actually still the most used framework out there. We need to understand usage and adoption. Usage and adoption is not simply a result of some trends of fanboys using that. Fanboys are often very small groups, so it's less likely that it's a fanboys phenomenon here, right? What we see is a long-term adoption of large and small companies alike of a common technology. We see an involvement like state management, like 10-stack query, those kind of things, or the frameworks like Next.js around React, or V2, which can be used with React. Those kind of things evolved because of the usage and the adoption rate of React in the market, in the companies, in the products. And since it continues, the new innovations in React continues as well. So we see a new upcoming version right now, which you already can test, which is the version with the React compiler, which changes again how React works internally, not so much externally, but internally. And now compare it to the web standard thing, like the web components, like vanilla.js, those kind of things. Those things don't evolve like that. When we take a look at web components, people say that it's actually a great thing that when we use web components today, we have the exact same technology, a little bit improved in the future in the next 20 years. I don't like them today, so I'm not 100% sure if I like them in 20 years. And this is what React actually is doing way better. It is doing a very agile approach here. So it's iterating, it's testing thing with a huge market, with a huge user base, right? So we all contributing in one way or another to this big iterative approach, where React becomes better with each version, or is doing things differently and treat it like a hypothesis and take a look what is actually good and what's not. And this is the reason why it's actually becoming better. Others may argue, oh, but it's very dangerous and maybe they're doing things we don't want. That could be a concern, but if I take a look at the last 3 years, we had a lot of changes. We had function components, we had hooks coming in, we had context coming in, we had server state managements changing, those kind of things. And I see no problem whatsoever. Everything was flawless. Everything regarding React and Next.js was kind of flawless. We have several code bases, several apps running, and yeah, we might be a little bit biased because sunken cost fallacy. Okay, we have already invested in that stuff, but still, I see no problems. So I could talk around problems, but in fact, there are no problems. And this is what is important to understand for us as a company. So we understood that we have actually made a quite good decision. It was the right horse to bet on, right? And we would do that again because of the rich ecosystem. So it's easy to find developers out there. It is easy to find a job as a developer when you are a React developer, even though I don't like to call it React developer because it's in fact a JavaScript or TypeScript developer, but you know what I mean, right? And you have all these tools, you have this, as I said, Next.js is an example, Vite, all those great systems around React, which are well maintained, well adopted. You have, like in the cloud space, in the cloud native space, you have so many adoptions, so many things which are out of the box compatible with those things. And this is great to see. And this is what makes the entire development in React so much more easy than with most other frameworks. Yes, Vue and Svelte is an exception there. They are going a very similar route, but let's stick to React now. Another great aspect is what really have changed to the better is the onboarding time, the developer experience. All the developers who worked on our projects since we have actually changed to React are actually happy about what they do. Back then in the vanilla space, it was kinda, yeah. You know, vanilla JS, so the vanilla web, is a little bit like just, let's say, very, very open things. It is not very defined besides the web standards, right? Which is more like having physics, but what you do with that is totally to you. And that's the problem that every company I saw so far, which is working or which was working with vanilla, was doing things entirely different. I worked with vanilla for more than 2 decades, and it was always the same. It's like every company does have its own nitty-gritty things, own context, own ways to handle things, sometimes classes, sometimes functions, sometimes a weird mixture of those, sometimes an idea in between, sometimes jQuery, sometimes not, and those kind of things. And that is quite annoying, to be honest. That is very hard to tell a new junior developer or even a senior developer coming from somewhere else how to work with that. Onboarding is kind of awful because when you start in it right now in year 1, the people who work there define the first years to come. And when they might go away or other people come or the mindset changes, then suddenly the code base looks different. You see this, this salad you have created, this old thing, this new thing, this thing in between. And this is what I don't like. In React, you have a clear paradigm. UI equals function state. And you have components, you have hooks, you have state management, and you have some libraries like TensorQuery, which is actually a hook or a set of hooks, which communicates with the outside world. You have a clear process what is going on. And as soon as you have this structure inside your project, which is very common in the React world, then you actually have something which is very exchangeable and interchangeable with other companies. So when a developer is switching a company, that is actually a quite standardized thing. So you can onboard in some days new developers. I really mean to an effective state because, the components, the structure is most of the time not very different to what you see in other projects. So you only need to focus on what actually is going on in the applications. And this is what I really like. This is one of those major aspects, probably as a business person and developer at the same time to have in one application. And that was kind of nightmare back in the days, right? Probably you have the same ideas with other modern libraries, probably, but React is, for me, so special because it was the first thing to do it really right. Well, there's Angular, but I don't really much like Angular. That's, I don't like it. I don't know. It's kind of weird to work in that one. And React was the one which was really like, hey, that is the thing many people like. And you see that. And that, again, is one of the aspects of why we see such a usage of that library. And of course, on things like Next.js as well, which is probably the most famous meta framework you can let React run on. Please don't use create React App anymore. That's not a good idea. stay with things like Next.js or Vite. Vite is a builder, Next.js a framework. Those are very solid options. And I want to talk in the next episode about exactly that topic, because we are using Next.js and we are not 100% happy anymore with Next.js, or let's say a little bit concerned about the movement towards an own paradigm, which is very much about server-side generation above everything else. And even though React is a little bit going into the direction of supporting server-side stuff more than it was before, I am still a big believer of separation right now. So you have a separated backend, separated frontend. This is the reason why I want to talk about what is our concern there, and for whom it might be an interesting thing to look into things like Vite, which is way more open. It's just a builder. You can do basically anything with that, right? But you need to do a lot of things yourself, which is already coming out of the box in Next.js. And what the right approach there is a little bit more complicated than React itself, which is just a library you use inside those. And this is what I want to talk about. If that was helpful to you, please consider subscribing to the new channel, Snackable CTO, leave a like and a comment. I'm always happy to discuss those things. I'm a discussing person. I'm doing that on LinkedIn as well. And I will link the article inside the show notes. So please take a look. If this is interesting for you, you will see all the graphics and all the kind of things there as well. So I hope that was helpful. See you next week. I wish you a great day. Goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.